So we're approaching now the 11th month of hostage taking, of captives. They're taking dead bodies out of the tunnels now from Hamas. Where did Hamas get all this money?
This is going back to 1979 and the weakness of Jimmy Carter's administration, and again another globalist plan by British Petroleum to basically de-escalate Iran and the Shah. When the Shah was in charge, obviously everybody knew the Shah was a puppet of the US, but the Shah kept the Middle East in peace because the Shah had after the Russians and the Americans, the Iranian Air Force was the third largest Air Force. Iran Air was the first Middle Eastern company to buy Boeing 747s in 1977. Iran was a superpower itself. The Shah was trying to turn Iran into the Japan of the Middle East because he thought it was unfair that he sold a barrel of oil for $7. And a company, your camera's a Sony, right? A Sony VCR was $200 back in those days, or $100. A Walkman was $100. And he was able to only sell his oil for $7 a barrel. So he was going to he had sent all the children after high school out around the world, whether it was Germany, France, obviously England and the USA to study, to come back and help Iran rebuild. Now going back to 1979 and the Jimmy Carter administration, the weakness of the Jimmy Carter administration allowed Iran to fall into the hands of the mullahs. They had Khomeini in Paris for 30 years with the French help and America's money. They kept Khomeini alive. And unfortunately, Savak wasn't able to execute Khomeini. They brought Khomeini into the picture. They made people think that their lives would be better with a revolution. But it was really about fighting communism in the Middle East and not letting the Russians invade Iran again, as they had during World War I, World War II, and over the 1900s, the Russians had invaded Iran multiple times. During World War II, 10 million Iranians died of starvation because the Russians took all our grains, and nobody talks about that.
If we can bring this up to the notion of Islamic imperialism, that Iran now, are they in a battle with the Saudis as to who should run the Muslim world?
Well, the Iranian revolution of 1979 brought on Hezbollah's first act. They destabilized Lebanon more. The Christians were kicked out. In 1983, there was a Marines barracks bombing. I believe 300 Marines were slaughtered. About 3 weeks ago, the Israeli army finally took out the mastermind that set that up after 40 years. How can the CIA let this guy live for 40 years in Lebanon or wherever he was? Anyways, basically now, Iran has been funding Hezbollah, Hamas, obviously Hezbollah is all over Lebanon, Syria, Iran, Iraq, and in Gaza we've had Hamas, and none of these, Hamas is a little bit different because unfortunately the stupid European Union has been giving Hamas money for years. These Hamas people are used as a ploy for Europe in order to keep them against Israel, in order to use Israel as a pawn in the bigger chess game of the Middle East, to keep the Middle East kind of destabilized in a sense. So during the Trump administration and the Abraham Accords by Jared Kushner, the first thing they did was cut off Iran's funding that Obama was funding. Obama gave planefuls of cash to the Iranians. For what? I don't understand. There's obviously a bigger picture. So when Trump came into power, he shut off the funding for Iranian, controlled Iran with sanctions over and over again in order to stop not just the nuclear program, but Iran's funding of Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic jihadists, and other smaller organizations, whether it's in Indonesia, Philippines, all over the Middle East, all over Europe. They've had cells for years now.
Do they have cells in North America?
Of course, there's a lot of cells in North America. The FBI just reported last week that it's not going to be very safe. And unfortunately, when they do attack, we will have another September 11th. And these guys have been able to get arms from the Mexican cartels. The Mexican cartels are tied into Hamas. They're tied into Hezbollah. They're tied into Iran. They're transferring money back and forth and buying weapons from the Iranians in order to keep the Mexican people down. Now, what's happened is, for some reason, Joe Biden, whether it's Democratic policies that are ignorant, thinking they can appease people with money, they've been giving the Iranian regime boatloads of money since the beginning of 2020, since Joe Biden's fake election. And obviously, it's made the Iranian regime more bold and give more money to Hamas.
So with these, the removal of the sanctions that the Democrats imposed, Iran has made somewhere between 60 and 80 billion dollars through oil sales.
Iran doesn't need anybody's money. Iran, my country, is able to produce 17% of the world's oil. The problem is the oil is given to China for cheap, and unfortunately, Vladimir Putin basically runs the mullahs because they need Russia in order to buy weapons from Russia. So all this money that we gave to the Iranians emboldened Hamas more and more again. And now you're helping the Russians become friends with the Chinese and then using Iran as a proxy. The Chinese didn't want the military, the US Navy, to be in the Taiwan Straits. They helped October 7th massacres by hacking, with the Iranians help and the Chinese help. They hacked Israeli Defense Forces, and the security breach that happened, unfortunately, we'll never find out exactly. But as you can tell, the last 3 months, there's 2 aircraft carriers now in the Middle East away from Taiwan, Japan, Korea, and unfortunately the South Koreans will pay the ultimate price for it if and when North Korea decides to attack.
So these fleets, aircraft fleets, aircraft carrier fleets, yeah.
Aircraft carrier fleets.
Yeah. Are they there to protect Israel from getting attacked from Iran, or to protect Iran from getting attacked by Israel?
Well, the Iranians decided if they were going to attack, they were going to attack 2 weeks ago. But I think they were after there's thousands of Israeli Mossad agents living in Iran, and there's a lot of Khamenei, whatever these people are, that are Iranians living in Iran, and they're willing to take down the government as long as America is able to help. The problem is, without America, Iran will not change. So the reason the aircraft carriers are there is that the warmongers in America and the Democratic Party, the neocons, want another war. So they were trying to push Iran to start attacking Israel. So then the Americans can attack Iran and basically take over and say, oh, you know what, we need another war. And then unfortunately that'll bring Russia into another war, and it'll probably bring Saudi Arabia to attack Iran as well. So hopefully there's no war in that region, because ultimately if it starts a war, it's going to be a big problem for Israel.
Could you tip your hat up a little bit so we can see more your eyes a little better?
My eyes?
Yeah, tip your hat. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there's a light. Yeah, the light changes. There you go. But Israel has, although they were attacked, now their execution of the war to eradicate Hamas and the Palestinians who support them has gotten Israel made a pariah. And now you're wearing a shirt and a tag in support of Israel.
Chloe, where are you? Yeah, pick me up or you drop me off. Bye. Sorry.
Okay. So Israel, which is starting off to protect its people and to stop the Islamic Jihad, the imperialists backed by Iran. So now Israel and supporters of Israel are now have become vilified demonized, and Israel is now seen as the enemy. What would you tell people who think that?
If you think that, come to the Nova Festival right here at the Los Angeles exhibit of the Nova Festival. Watch the videos. Wars have consequences, unfortunately. It's human nature to defend yourself. If you get attacked, you have to defend yourself. Unfortunately, since 2005, for some reason, the Clinton administration forced the Israelis to pull out of Gaza. How come the UN hasn't stepped in to control Gaza just like they've done in multiple places around the world? So if the UN is not going to step in and help Israel, Israel has to take action to wipe out Hamas in Gaza and actually free the people of Gaza, because the people of Gaza don't want Hamas. They don't want Hamas having control. So the same thing goes to Lebanon. My Christian Lebanese friends are begging for Israel to go into Lebanon and wipe out Hezbollah out of Lebanon.
But what would the Harris Democratic regime, there rumors that Blinken will be replaced by Paul Gordon, who's an anti-Zionist, and that Hatem will be in charge of National Security Agency. These are all anti-Israels and Israeli and pro-Islamist.
It's going to force Israel, if God forbid they do this, it's going to force Israel into the hands of Russia and Putin. Because
force who into the hands of Russia?
Israel is going to have to go to Russia, because inside Israel there's 2 million people that speak Russian. There's more than 2.5 million Russians living in Israel now. And obviously Russia is running Syria, which is right next to Israel at the moment. And Iran and Iraq are run by Putin as well. And it's going to be very amazing once the Saudis finish forming their relations within the Abraham Accords, and Oman, Dubai, United Arab Emirates, not Qatar, but those countries want to be working with Israel, trading with Israel, having education experiences back and forth with Israel. And maybe, God forbid, if Kamala Harris cheats her way in or gets in somehow, it's going to push Israel more and more away from America.
But maybe that's their goal, is to vilify Israel and vilify support. And by support, I mean Zionistic Christians and Jewish people.
Well, unfortunately, the world needs a Christian crusade now. But in Europe, all the men are not as manly as they were 100 years ago or 60 years ago, 70 years ago. They lost their masculinity by all these movements, and it's on purpose to make people into sheep and just follow the rule of what the governments want them to do.
How about North America?
North America is the same way. We don't eat as much steak. We don't smoke cigarettes. All these things help with testosterone, and they're taking that away from men. They want men to be weak. We need to be stronger. We need to be tougher. Men need to be men. Women need to be women. We need Christian, Judeo-Christian values to come back to America and the world as a whole.
So are you concerned that as a Zionistic person, that it might become uncomfortable to remain in America under a prospective next democratic regime?
Look, my friends' kids were attacked at UCLA, they were attacked at USC, and they already started again, and it's not fair. But you can never wipe the Jews off the map of the world anywhere. Since 3,500 years ago, we've been kicked out of multiple places. I met a gentleman today that his parents were Holocaust survivors from Romania, and somehow they got to Israel. Jews are persuasive people. We come together. We'll fight our way out no matter what. We hope there's no cheat this year. If there is, it's going to affect the whole world. It's going to forget the globalists, forget the communists. It's going to be a really, really sad state of affairs, because America is not going to be the leader of the world. And when there's no leader of the world, there's going to be a vacuum. The Russians are strong enough to take over.
How about the Chinese?
The Chinese already took over Africa. They took over some parts of the Middle East. They took over our manufacturing, whether it's our iWatch or the microphone or this well, the PVC is made in America, but that flag is printed in China. So they have their own issues now financially.
But don't they have a lot of influence in Washington already?
Of course they do. They have influence in a lot of places, and this is the whole Green New Deal is funding China because all the solar panels are made in China. Now the Chinese are copying EV electric vehicles. They want to sell electric vehicles to America. They're already doing it in the Middle East. They're doing it in Africa. They're doing it in Pakistan, Bangladesh, and these places. You know, the Chinese have a lot of power, but they're having their own issues inside China internally with their economy. So they're going to digress the next 50 years. They're not going to be able to go, all these plans they had, China 2049, those things are over.
So what would you say to Jews who are just reflexive Democrats and against voting for Trump if they continue the Democrat, not only White House, but also turn the House, and so that all three bodies of American law, American government, are controlled by Democrats?
This is not the old Democratic Party of Robert, JFK, the working class, families. This is the new Democratic Party. Now the Jews, for instance, I call them Jinos, J-I-N-O, Jew in name only. They're not Jews. Most of them, their grandparents or their parents were Holocaust survivors. They've been brainwashed because of the ACLU, the NAACP. These are all Jewish-run organizations. They think the same thing applies to them that applied in the 60s. But as you can tell, every time Martin Luther King walked down the street, there were always rabbis and Jews with him everywhere because it's the same thing. But Jews have been hated all over the world, whether we lived in Iran, in a Muslim country, or your parents came from a Eastern European country, or from North Africa, or from South Africa. Anywhere in the world there were Jews, other than Japan, we've been hated, we've been driven out of. The only place that's left in this country, in this world, is in the United States and Israel. You have to understand, if America falls, the rest of the world falls. And we've seen that the last 3 years with the economic collapses of the stock markets, interest rates, food costs, gas prices, the least amount of manufacturing of oil in the U.S., natural gas in the U.S.
But what would lead America to fall, as you say, if America falls?
America's already fallen. People don't go to church. You know, they lost religious values in a lot of places. We've lost our morality. We lost our Judeo-Christian values. This whole pride movement. You want to be whatever you want to be, do it behind closed doors. You don't have to force it on my children.
But how about what the Democrats are doing? They say Bidenomics.
Well, Bidenomics is print money, and be broke. And then what happens? The price of everything's gone up. If you want to bring inflation down, the first thing is oil prices need to move down. America's a very, very, very large landmass. We need diesel trucks running around, moving goods, food, trade, canned foods. Whatever you name moves on a big truck. So the prices of trucking needs to go down, and the number one thing is diesel prices. So we need to drill, baby. And that'll bring the price of everything down.
And would that occur under Democrats?
No, because the Chinese don't want us to have cheap oil. The Chinese want us to have expensive oil so they can sell their green agenda to the U.S. Everybody buy solar panels. Everybody buy windmills that don't work. Everybody buy electric vehicles that don't work. And unfortunately, everybody's seen that in California, where the government's trying to force people to buy electric cars. I drive a Tesla. Tesla works for me because I can charge my car at home. I have solar panels. I have batteries in my home. But it's not for everybody. And you can't move goods on a Tesla Cybertruck, on a semi truck, because it's not going to work. He's tried. It's just not enough battery power to pull heavy stuff. So we need diesel trucks for a long time to come until we have enough fusion power in the U.S. And that takes building nuclear plants in order to get to fusion. We're 30, 35, 40 years away from fusion power. Once you have that, then you can make hydrogen, and you can have all the hydrogen in the world and be able to move environmentally clean, cheap. But we need to be the first for that. And then again, everything's moving to AI. We need more electricity. We're not producing enough electricity in the U.S. You need natural gas for electricity. You need diesel. You need coal. We're burning more coal today in the U.S. than we did 10 years ago. And people don't talk about it.
So if there are people who don't like President Donald Trump personally, should they look beyond their personal to their long-term self-interest?
I hope people vote with their wallets, as they always have. Vote for your children's children. Vote for the future of America. Vote for the future of the world. Vote with your paycheck. Yeah, Donald Trump doesn't say the right things at the right time always, because he's a New Yorker. He grew up in New York. He's from the city. That's the way people talk. But the rest of America doesn't understand that. You want to be a New Yorker, he's got to be able to just keep talking about the economic points and his policies, and family first. Kamala Harris doesn't have kids. There's a reason why she doesn't have children. I never trust anybody that doesn't have children. Something must have happened to them, or they chose not to have children because they knew they couldn't trust themselves bringing up another person. I have 3 children. This is the reason why I come here every Saturday, to get the word out, to get people to wake up, to see what's happened in America. Economically, everybody's depressed. Everybody's in a sad state because the cost of everything has gone up. Everybody's business has been affected that I work with, and we need a better future for our children. And we need a better future for America, obviously.